This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Richard Triggs has written books for both ends of your bookshelf. His Uncover the Hidden Job Market, How to Find and Win Your Next Senior Executive Role, was a bestseller and now is in its second edition. Mr. Triggs is now writing for the other end of the shelf, a book aimed at managers called Winning the War for Talent, How to Attract and Retain Top Performers. Richard Triggs is our guest in this episode of Bizgnus Interviews. Richard, you have written both ends of a bookshelf. Your first bestseller was How to Find Hidden, kind of aimed at the job seeker. Now you're coming out with a new book, How to Attract and Retain Top Talent, which obviously has a great audience among people who are trying to hire top talent. So you've got both ends. We'll eventually get to the middle, perhaps. But tell us, first, before we get into your books, tell us a little bit about your company and how you got it started.
Sure. Well, look, firstly, thanks very much for the opportunity. Great to be here and have this conversation with you. So my business is called Arete Executive. Arete is a Greek word. It means the fulfillment of one's full potential. And we have very recently, literally this month, turned 15 years old. As I say to people, we're well and truly a pimply-faced teenager now. We're about to learn to drive a car, and it's been a pretty wild ride. We started in the height of the GFC, the global financial crisis, and obviously there's lots of things that have been going on in the world over the past 15 years. But I'm physically based in Brisbane, Australia, which I imagine for most of you, your listeners, is right on the other side of the world. But interestingly, one of the, I suppose, the silver linings that came out of COVID was people's desire and confidence in talking on Zoom and Teams, and so we are what you call a headhunter or a retained executive search firm, and even from Brisbane, Australia, we've been recruiting Americans in America for jobs in America. So I can't say we do it a lot, but we've been doing it more and more regularly, and I thought, wow, this is what a wild world, that a tiny little, city like Brisbane, as compared to your huge cities in the US, we've been invited to do that work. So it's exciting times.
Well, one of the things that we have found is a constant conversation, whenever we're talking to hiring managers, is how on earth do they find top talent and then go about retaining them, because apparently money doesn't talk totally.
No, well, that's for sure. In fact, we use a recruitment methodology developed by an American called Lou Adler, and when he talks about what attracts a candidate to a particular role or keeps them in their current role, there are 11 factors, of which remuneration is just one. So without sort of going through all of them in a lot of detail, job match, can they actually do the job? Job stretch, is there enough stretch to keep them motivated and engaged, but not too much that they feel out of their depth? Job growth, is there potential promotion opportunities in the future? Who's the team they'll be working with? Are they given the right tools to do the job? Is the hiring manager somebody that they trust and respect? What about the executive leadership of the team, the vision and the values, the risk associated with the role, work-life flexibility, and remuneration and benefits? So I think that companies that only focus on the money are missing out on a huge opportunity to really promote an opportunity based on all of those factors. And of course, every employee has different weightings and different expectations and desires in relation to each of those factors. So there's lots companies can do. Right from at the very beginning is, how do they present themselves and position themselves as an employer of choice in the market? What is their website doing that is exciting people to want to come and work for them? Most companies' websites are very they're wonderful at selling the goods and services of the business to their customers. But even though these companies say people are our biggest asset, there's really no or very limited attention on their website on, what are their success stories? Are they showcasing people in their teams that have done exceptionally well? Are they loud and proud about either diversity or other attributes of what they are as an employer? And then, of course, the next thing is for the executive leaders in those businesses to actually have LinkedIn profiles that are compelling. So a lot of employees will always look at the LinkedIn profile of a person prior to deciding, do I want to apply to this role? Do I want to work for this person? Are they somebody that would inspire me and mentor me and develop me to my full potential? Well, if somebody's LinkedIn profile is really boring and bland and doesn't really do much other than give a summary of their career history, then it's not very compelling. So there are lots and lots of things employers can do to attract top performers beyond just putting an ad on a job board and praying that the right person applies.
I relate to that so much. I just finished researching a person we were going to do a podcast with down the road, and looked at their website, and they must have dozens of people with their little headshots, next to the little bio,
Mm-hmm.
but not one that I found said anything about they began here and now are over here, and they've grown in such a way. They don't
Right.
show any growth. They just show, hey, we could have gotten this out of their college yearbook.
Yeah. That's true. And also not only are the people in your team that you have you can share as a success story, but companies do so many interesting things. They support charities. They engage in all kinds of extracurricular uh, things in the marketplace that would make people go, wow, this looks like a really fun place to work. Look at their commitment to supporting the homeless, or improving the environment, or their commitment to fostering diversity and promoting women, or whatever it might be. And the thing about it is, a lot of companies do those things, they just don't promote it. They don't share those stories. And so again, companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on advertising. You think about, you've just had your Super Bowl, how much they spend for one ad in the Super Bowl, and yet all of those things they could be doing to promote themselves as an employer of choice, they can do virtually for free, and yet they don't do it.
Why is that, do you think?
I think it's just ignorance. And when I say ignorance, not in a negative or judgmental way, more they just don't know what they don't know. The thing is, it's like anything. An architectural firm may be great at building buildings. A medical practice may be great at, doing operations, etc., but it doesn't mean they're good at recruitment. The people are very good at their core skill. And a lot of hiring managers will say, oh, well, I know how to recruit. I've recruited 100 people in my career. You can't tell me. And yet they've still got mission critical vacancies that they can't fill. So you need to continue to develop yourself as a leader and learn and grow. And one of the ways to do that is to continue to learn about how to hire and attract the top talent, which is really why I wrote my book.
And which is why you are really in business.
True. Yes. If I couldn't help companies to do that, I don't think I'd be in the marketplace for very long.
Well, Richard, what got you into this business? It's not something that pops up on a college thing. We educate you to become a recruiter, something like that.
No, and in fact, I think one of the negative attributes of the recruitment industry is that there is no professional qualification, there's no accreditation, there's no barrier to entry. Anybody can print a business card, say they're a recruiter, and away they go. So unlike engineering or architecture or being a doctor or an accountant, where you have to have qualifications, so most people fall into recruitment, and certainly that was the case for me. I when I was in my early 30s, I was working essentially as the chief operating officer of a building services company, and I was doing an executive MBA. And my boss at the time had just taken equity in the business. He was 50 years old, and I knew that he wasn't going anywhere. So I thought to myself, well, if I want to progress my career, I need to probably think about working for somebody else. And I went to see a recruiter that I'd been a client of, and they said to me, "Oh, Richard, have you ever thought about working in the recruitment industry?" And before you know it, I was working in the recruitment industry. And so, that was over 20 years ago now. And now I thoroughly enjoy the work that I do. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. But it's a tough business. There's lots of competition. It is the only role, I think, where you're selling a product that actually can change its mind. We're dealing with people. So they say the recruitment industry is champagne and razor blades. When you have a good day and you make a successful placement, you pop the champagne and everybody celebrates. And then, of course, the razor blades for the days that don't go quite so well.
And you had the bright idea of starting your company during an economic downturn. Wait a minute, what's wrong with that picture?
Well, I think that as the old saying goes, Doug, fortune favors the brave. But at the time, I'd been working in a business for about 5.5 years, and I had let's just say a strong difference of opinion with the owners of that company, and they decided that it was time for Richard to go and find a job elsewhere. And also my wife, we just had our first child, and she had come from the recruiting industry as well. And so in the GFC, she was struggling to find a new job. And so we thought, well, why don't we just start this nice little mum and dad recruitment business? And Arete was born. So it's been a wild roller coaster ride, and I regularly talk to business owners, and we commiserate with each other about how many times during the history of our businesses we've thought, oh, this is just too hard. I just want to go back and work for somebody else. But, here we are 15 years later, and the business is going great, having lots of fun, getting to talk to wonderful people like yourself. Life is good.
Well, Richard, you talk to people all the time with a podcast or two. One or two, I don't quite remember. Tell us about that.
Well, I have one podcast. It's called the Arete podcast, Arete, which is obviously the same name as my business. And on that podcast, I interview predominantly CEOs and chairs and business owners about their background, their business, etc. And we do that for two reasons. One is, often if we're headhunting for a company, I like to have the CEO or the owner of the company on my podcast so we can really talk about what makes them tick and why they love their business and the vision and the values and the culture and the things they're excited about for the future and so on. And then when we go out to headhunt for them, we say to the candidates, look, if you want to get a feel for your future boss, have a listen to the podcast. The candidates love it. It really helps to build their excitement about the opportunity and a further way to develop the company as an employer of choice. So that's been I'm not familiar or aware of any other recruitment company, certainly in Australia, doing that. And that's been very successful. And then I will launch in conjunction with my new book, Winning the War for Talent, a new podcast, which will be very much educational around how do companies both attract and then also retain top people. And so that will be a mixture of interviews with thought leaders and so on in that space, as well as listening to my dulcet tones.
Well, dulcet tones aside, attracting, just finding that talent is very difficult, many people say. What tips do you offer employers about finding, other than hiring your company, of course, which goes without saying, I suppose, but what else do they do?
Well, there are a few things that companies often don't do well, and if they did them better, then they would get much better results. So the first thing is to actually think about, what are we hiring for? What does success look like? A lot of companies, when they are either briefing third-party recruiters or they're delegating it internally to a talent acquisition team or whatever, they'll provide them with a position description, which is quite generic. Let's say it's a sales manager role, and it will say, essentially, we want somebody to manage the sales team and do it well and achieve budget, and hopefully they've got this kind of background, but quite bland. What is the actual role that you're recruiting? If this person started in the role tomorrow, what do they need to achieve in the first 3 months to be successful? What about the following 3 months? What about within the first 12 months? It's very, very important, and and often companies don't do that well, to really be clear about what do we need. And in each role, each situation, it will be unique, because you want to find people who've done it before, they've done it well, and they're motivated to do it again. So if you don't really know what you want them to do, then it's hard to find those people. And then on the other side of the coin, people love to do what they're good at. So the more comprehensively you can explain to candidates what they're being employed to do, the more likely you are they're going to say, hey, I love doing that. I'm really good at it. I'm definitely interested. Or alternatively, to say, thanks, but no thanks. The next thing that companies need to do is to really think about a multi-pronged approach to attracting candidates. Most companies will have an internal talent acquisition team who might throw a job up on a job board. The ad is quite bland. It is lacking in detail, and they don't put their name and phone number on the ad for candidates to be able to ring up and ask any questions. This is very, very common now, certainly in Australia. I'd say at least 95% of the time, there's nobody there for candidates to contact. So if you think a good candidate may look at your ad, they may be attracted to the role, but they want more information before they decide if they're going to apply, and there's nobody's name to ring, they won't apply unless they're very actively looking for a new job, in which case they're not necessarily the person that you want. You want those passive job seekers, people who are in jobs, they're doing well, they like their boss, they're relatively well paid, they're not actively looking for a job. They need to be coerced, or, they need to be marketed to. And by not putting somebody's name and phone number on an ad, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. Also is to think about who can you ask for referrals. So typically, the hiring manager should be thinking, who do I know that might know this person? Our suppliers, our customers. Have I spoken to my hiring manager? Have we spoken to the board? Have we spoken to what I call key people of influence within our industry, asking them, who do you know? A lot of the best candidates come through referrals. And then the final element, which is obviously the place where I play, is to headhunt. So LinkedIn is a magnificent tool for headhunting. It's very easy to find out who's who in the zoo and where they work and their background, and to be able to target them. Unfortunately, when companies are recruiting themselves, they can't headhunt confidentially, because they have to disclose if Sam, the internal talent acquisition person from Apple, wants to headhunt from Hewlett-Packard. By the very nature of reaching out, they have to say, hi, I'm Sam from Apple. Now, you may not want your competitors to know that you're actively headhunting from them, or there may be somebody in the job that needs to be replaced, so you need to do it very confidentially. There could be a whole heap of reasons, and of course, internal talent acquisition are unable to do that. So it's in those instances that organizations should be thinking, we need to hire a specialist headhunter, of which there are many good ones in Australia, and I'm sure there's many, many good ones in the US. And obviously that's what I do, as that is our business.
Before we go much further, would you give our listeners and viewers a way to contact you? Perhaps you have a website.
Sure. So my business, again, is called Arete Executive, and the website is www.arete, Arete, executive, all one word, .com.au. In Australia, we have this little AU at the end to designate that we're an Australian business. So that's my company website. My own personal website is about to go live again. It's just had some big overhaul done. And obviously another way to find me is through LinkedIn. So if people see me on LinkedIn, it's very easy to reach out to me and message me that way.
Richard, you've given us 1,000 good ideas, but what would you like to add that I haven't been bright enough to ask you?
Well, I think if we're talking from the perspective of the employer, is to really, firstly, be confident that you are an awesome business and an awesome manager, and you deserve to have awesome talent working for you. But people need to know that. It's not enough for you to just outsource this recruitment function or delegate it internally and expect that they are going to be able to do everything and carry everything for you. If you want to get excellent results consistently, you need to start as a manager to be thinking about, how do I build my brand and how am I actively engaging in the market? Am I talking at conferences? Am I appearing on podcasts? Am I writing blogs or articles that are appearing on my LinkedIn profile? How am I building my brand to start to attract people to want to work for me? And that way, building a bench of talent for the future rather than being in this reactive mode every time a vacancy becomes available.
You've been listening to the Bizgnus Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.